Free will. It's one of the bedrock claims of Christianity, among other religions. It's the assumption that we have the ability to fully and freely make decisions for ourselves. After all, according to most Christians, salvation is dependent on freely choosing to believe in, follow, love, and worship God and Jesus Christ. If free will doesn't exist, then that would mean our salvation isn't up to us, wouldn't it? Instead, it would be up to the one who created us, God, and we would be powerless to change our fates. That would be a problem, because if the vast majority of humanity is going to hell, as certainly most conservative Christians believe, then that would mean God creates most people with the specific intent of sending them to hell to be tortured for all eternity. Not only would that be cruel and unjust, but it would also mean that God is responsible for all evil caused by humanity. It would make him a monster. Fortunately, we have free will, right? I mean, we can will our fingers to wiggle, we can decide to take the salad over the donut, and we can choose to believe in God, right? Not so fast. What may seem intuitively obvious often has nothing to do with reality. Just like it is intuitively obvious that the sun circles the earth, even though science has proven that false. An appeal to intuition is a fallacy, not evidence. Furthermore, there are some significant philosophical, theological, and scientific arguments that contradict the notion of free will. The first problem is the claim that we can choose to believe in and love God. As I've argued in a previous video, belief is not a choice. Sure, we often casually use the term, I choose to believe in whatever, but the reality is, our minds just don't work that way. If you don't believe me, there's an easy test you can do that will prove it to yourself. Assuming you don't believe in the existence of, say, the underpants gnomes, just try to choose to believe in them. You will fail. That's because belief is simply not a choice. It's the same thing with love. Nobody just decides he or she wants to fall in love and then does so. Our minds fall in love based on emotional attraction independent of choice. Try it for yourself. Find a person you don't consider at all appealing and choose to fall deeply in love with him or her. It won't work. For both belief and love, we all have certain standards that must be met in order to occur. But choice is not one of them. Even the claim that we can freely choose to do good or evil has problems, since we are predisposed by instinct to behave in certain ways. For example, Christianity considers lust to be evil, but lust is an instinctive emotion. We don't choose whether or not to feel lust. We simply do so when exposed to the right stimuli. We can often choose to avoid exposure to that stimuli, or choose to suppress our feelings, but we can't freely choose to not feel lust itself. Yet according to Christianity, we can be punished for what we believe, for whom we love, and for what we feel, all thoughts over which we have no control. The biblical claim that God is all-knowing and that he has a plan for everything also causes problems for the concept of free will. If God is all-knowing, then by definition he knows everything we will ever do, and that means we are powerless to change our fates. Our decisions are thus predetermined, even if we are not aware of it. More significantly, the Bible also claims that God has a plan for everything. If that is true, then unless our decisions can screw up his plans, and thus violate his supposed omniscience, we cannot have the free will to change what he has decided for everything. And those aren't the only biblical passages that imply we lack free will. More interesting, if God is all-knowing, then by definition he has to know everything he himself will do, which means he is powerless to do anything different from what he already knows. That means God cannot possess free will himself. Either that, or he is not all-knowing and thus capable of making mistakes. And his powerlessness to either change his fate or make himself all-knowing also means he can't be all-powerful, by definition. But that's a different topic. So if God lacks free will, would he give us free will? The Bible suggests that he would not give us any ability he himself does not possess. Finally, nowhere in the Bible does it actually say we have free will. Some Christians will point to certain passages that indicate choice, but choice only means something can be selected. It doesn't necessitate free will, since external forces can determine the choice you will make. Even a computer that completely lacks free will can be programmed to make complex choices. So even the Christian's own Bible doesn't support the claim that free will exists. And things only get worse from a scientific perspective. Most physicists and neurologists think that free will may be an illusion. After all, atoms behave deterministically, meaning based on cause and effect, and all matter in the universe, including us, is made of atoms. This implies that we ourselves operate deterministically, and thus lack free will. To counter this, some theists point to the uncertainty principle. The argument goes like this. Quantum mechanics shows that the universe actually operates not with certainty, but with probability. And because random events can occur, that leaves an opening for free will to exist. But the problem is that the uncertainty in quantum mechanics is truly random, meaning that the randomness can influence us, but we can't influence it. The uncertainty principle might cause us to make a different decision than the one we might expect from all the events that led up to that moment. But if so, that choice would be random, not as a result of our will. Even more interesting, I think, is the results of recent experiments measuring brain activity during the process of making a free will decision. A functional MRI scanner can detect changes in blood flow in your brain that reveal exactly which decision you will make 7 seconds before you believe you are making that decision. Think about that for a moment. A full 7 seconds before you are even consciously aware of making a free will decision, your brain has already made the decision for you, entirely unconsciously. Only late in the process does your brain allow you to think you are consciously making the decision, even though the decision has already been made. While the experiment is simple and may not reflect more complex moral decisions, it's still powerful evidence that free will is nothing more than an illusion. If we operate deterministically, merely responding to cause and effect like all other matter in the universe, then why would our brains fool us into thinking we have free will? There actually is a sociobiological explanation for why we may have evolved such a perception. People who read information challenging the existence of free will prior to taking a test are more likely to cheat on that test. Since morality is necessary for the success of all social species, and humans are among the most social of social species, the perception of free will may have evolved as a mechanism to increase moral behavior. Better to live with the illusion that free will exists if it means increased survival for the species. By the way, if that's true, then it may be a good idea if you just forget about ever having watched this video. Realizing that free will is likely nothing more than an illusion doesn't mean we should stop helping those in need or prosecuting criminals. After all, even if we are essentially robots, slaves to a complex mix of cause and effect, we still have motivations and we still want to live in safe, friendly societies, right? Rewarding good behavior and punishing bad behavior contributes to the cause and effect that results in the world we want to live in. So if free will doesn't actually exist, then what does this mean for God? Well, if he exists, as described in the Bible, then he is the one ultimately responsible for how everyone turns out. That in itself is neither good nor evil, But if God punishes people for doing exactly what He set in motion for them to do, if He bases salvation on behaviors like belief and love that are beyond our control, then that makes Him a cruel, unjust, hypocritical, petty monster. That is what the evidence reveals.